Hey, good morning. Glad you're here. Glad you're taking a little time out of your day to stop by and hopefully be encouraged and challenged a little bit to grow your relationship with Christ. That's what the purpose of Waypoints is all about. I've been thinking a little bit about all the billions of people that are on the earth, all of them, or even the billions and billions more that have ever lived here. And of all of the people that are no two really have identical stories, do they? They're all different. No, none of those are really alike. They're all unique, but yet, which ones of those stories can play an integral part in God's story, in included in the integral, being an integral part of His plan, or perhaps put another way, who has life experiences that are or can be used in the propagation of God's kingdom? I would argue that potentially all of them do. All of those stories, all those life experiences of all those billions of people have the potential to be used for goodness in God's kingdom, and that includes mine and it includes your story as well. Our stories, each of us have unique features about them, but yet they have the possibility to impact God's kingdom for the good and in great and mighty ways. Romans chapter 8 says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. So think about some of the more popular stories of the Bible that see that verse actually being played out. There are a lot of people within the Bible that pretty much show how that passage, that those that God calls upon, all these stories can be used for good. Think about some of these. There was a guy named Saul God was going to use in big way within his story, and this comes from the book of Acts in chapter 9. And so God calls this other disciple, whose name was Ananias. He said, Ananias, I want you to go to this guy named Saul, because I got some mighty work I want for him to do. But Ananias had heard about Saul because Saul had elements of his story that were way against the things of God. Ananias knew that part of Saul's story was that Saul was very evil towards those people who were followers of Christ. Saul had set out to harm any follower of Christ and imprison anyone who called on God's name. True, but yet Ananias was used in part of the plan to use this man Saul, who was later named Paul, to impact God's kingdom in great ways. Or think of Joseph in the Old Testament from Genesis 50, or Esther from the book of Esther. Both of those people were really brought up in the camp of the enemy. Joseph brought up in Egypt, and Esther brought up in the kingdom of Persia, and both of those were countries and kingdoms that were opposed to God's people. But yet those people were both used in mighty ways for the growing of God's kingdom. Or David. Think of David, a regular sheep herder. He was also an adulterer. He was also a murderer, but he was used as Israel's mighty king. No personal story is beyond what God can do for His kingdom. For those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. Even those guys, popular guys we know from the Bible, those stories were used. Even my story, it can be. I know I have stuff about me now. I know I have stuff about me in my past. Is it possible my story can have influence? Can my story be used? Short answer is yes. God's goodness is within us. We light, privileged people, we have benefits for living. Clearly there are benefits of being people exposed to His life, goodness about our lives because we have received the righteousness that comes only through Christ. But that's not all of it. We are to participate. We are to be part of the telling of this mighty story. You and I, those Those are ones, you and I are the ones who are called. We have been called in that sense, and I must not ever think of this as being an entitlement. It's not. This is a gift. I need to rearrange my mindset in that way, and I need to rearrange my mindset by not assuming that this goodness that is part of my life, it's not just some cultural thing. It's not just where I was born. It's a divine gift. It is from above. James chapter 1:17 says, every good and perfect gift. Which ones? Everyone. Every good and perfect gift comes from above, coming down from the Father. And that needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be made known. A danger in this as we think about how it is that we are to tell our story. We don't have separate truths. We do have separate experiences, but that's about making his truth known, making him known. Our life stories do not make up a different truth that's different from somebody else. No, there's one truth. It's rather our story finds its place and its purpose in the truth of God. You know what greatness there is in this reality that you and I have, in that our stories can have kingdom level impact. Ours are ones which can literally have eternal impact on others. And I guess I would argue that the living and the telling of that story, our stories, it's not natural. It doesn't come naturally. It's one that needs intentional and deliberate work. Last time we talked about the passage from 1 Peter that says, always be prepared to give a reason for the hope you have. Always be ready to tell your story. Be prepared. That means the deliberate, intentional work that we need to do to tell that story. There's a saying that goes this way: preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words. And I like that. Preach the gospel. Go tell this good news of Christ at all times. And if you have to, use words. That means the telling of our story isn't just about words. It's about living. It's about how it is that we live. If we got to use words, we use words. I think a challenge for us is let's be more deliberate about telling our story by living out our lives in a way that reflects God's grand story. And yeah, maybe in the telling of that story, we use words. That telling, that living is all about making him known. Thanks for stopping by.
Step to the road where light will shine, waypoints guide through the divine journey of faith with